by the way, everyone, I'm chronically ill. I can't do what I wanted to do. I've got some challenges coming up. This is who I am. And so people were quite shocked. So when people would find out, people would say flippantly to me, do you need a kidney? And I counted 11. I had 11 people, and some of them are very dear to me, don't get me wrong, like the people that I love and care about. But
like it's I'll buy your coffee kind of deal.
it was a bit like that. So the best and warmest of intentions, which you take out of it, and
it is beautiful intent,
and you love them for that. But it would often finish with, "Oh, just let me know." And like you said, it's not like saying, "Look,
how about that kidney?"
Yeah, it's exactly right. So, hey, 2 months later, I'm really struggling. Can you, pass us that vital organ?
Cough it up, please.
I'm happy to throw that out. Yeah.
Sick. Ready to go, huh?
Let's roll.
Sweet. So test. Volumes are all good. Fantastic. Stephen, welcome. I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with us today. So currently you're the General Manager of Consumer Business and Marketing at Port Adelaide Football Club, but there's a bigger story. There's something that I think needs sharing, and it's not really where I want to start. So for a long time now, you've known that you've been battling a chronic illness called polycystic kidney disease, which is short for PKD, which is a genetic disorder that causes fluid in the cysts, right?
Yep.
And it's a chronic disease that basically reduces the kidney function over time and leads to kidney failure if you don't do anything about it.
That's right. That's right.
So part of that was going through dialysis, which is a cleaning process of the kidneys to help you, I guess, function so that you maybe have like a tie-over strategy to find a transplant in the meantime.
Yep.
So you're going through that 3 times a week, pretty intense period. I'm sure that would have been very heavy on the body and the mind doing that each week. And from there, you've received a kidney transplant from someone close to you. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to talk about how this came about and how the transplant has changed your life and just anything around that journey.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Look, I inherited a disease from my maternal side called polycystic kidneys, as you say, PKD, which I found out that I had when I was around 20, just through a scan that my mum prompted, thinking that it could be a possibility. And I guess up until that point, you're feeling pretty invincible and not thinking that it's possible. So I approached it just ticking a box, and as it turned out, had the scan and the note that was handed to me just said consistent with PKD. So that was a real shock to the system, and I think really what the biggest shock was this suddenly, it felt like my mortality was just facing me, looking at me, and because I knew nothing about it. I had no context. I had no real benchmark to work from. So I was just riddled with fear, and that took me a long time to work through, I think, as a young person, and then even as I got older, it was always there. It was always this feeling of knowing it was approaching. It was like this pending doom in my mind, and I'd put it away for 6 months. I'd put it away for 3 months, whatever, and then I'd go and see my doctor again, and they'd remind me, you can't do anything about this. So I'd ask lots of questions. I'd be asking about food. I'd ask about lifestyle.
There's a way. Surely there's a way to get out of this.
And I think that gets to the biggest challenge was just releasing control. And that took me a long, long time to do that. And, even up to the point of transplant, you're just clinging for control of your life and some aspect of this disease. But, look, as I sort of approached my 40s, I could certainly feel my health deteriorating, and a lot of it was initially through fatigue, and I just felt tired all the time. And you're trying to work out, is it because I've got kids, I've got a job, I'm busy, and life's hectic? But then starting to really pay closer attention to my bloods and to my kidney results, I could see what was happening, and the writing was on the wall. And In my mind, I always thought that was going to happen in my 50s, my kidney failure, and a bit later on, like it had some relatives. But no, this one was coming much earlier. So again, I think for me, it was accepting that, my journey is not going to be the same as the family and those close to me. It's going to be my own journey. Kids are at a different phase of their life. My career's at a different phase. And I really had no choice but to stare it down. And so I started dialysis when I was 42. And that, as you say, included 3 times a week of going to a clinic, and it was quite a nice place, and sitting through dialysis, which was really difficult. There wasn't a lot of preparation and education, I think, going into that moment. It was really just, you're going to need dialysis, you need your blood cleaned. Go here 3 times a week, and it's a pretty full-on procedure. It's about 4 hours. You've got 2 nail-like needles into your arm, and out of one needle comes the dirty blood, goes into the machine, washes it, and brings back clean blood.
Wow, that's intense. Yep.
So very intense, yeah, and even just cold, like you're freezing cold. The blood that goes back in's at a much lower temperature. You're literally physically trapped there because you can't move. You're on the needle, so you're really just caught in your own head at that point. So
that been a heavy reflection period all through that time, getting dialysis 3 times a week, and really having that time to just stop and think about what's actually going on and how it's affecting your life.
Yeah, you're forced into that. You can try to ignore it with a few podcasts, and you can ignore it with a few TV shows or something, but you'd always come back to it. And there's multiple moments, whether the moment is waking up, the alarm goes really early. I had early dialysis to try to fit in with work. So I was up at 6 a.m. and on the needle, as we say, by 7. And, those cold winter mornings, and you're just thinking, when's this going to end? How's it going to play out from here? And then at the same time, trying to stay in the moment, knowing that today I just need the needles, I need my blood cleaned. Let's stay with it. And be present. So but it was a lot of reflection time, and a lot of it was, the inner voice working overtime, trying to battle the fatigue and the fear, the frustration with, almost getting yourself into a bit of a warrior mentality of bring it, let's go. What have you got for me today? I've got you.
Do you feel like you need to get into that zone, that kind of warrior zone, to move through those challenging times?
Yeah, it really helped me cope. It's not a natural state for me, I think. But I think when you're up against the wall, you feel like there's no other option because you can't cave. You have to stare it down and walk towards it. Would be my mindset. They were the words I'd say to myself: is bring it, let's go. And it became in my mind a battle against the illness and for me, that also was combined with trying to find meaning and purpose and link that, almost at certain times then finding this becomes an opportunity. This is the midlife crisis.
How did you spin that? And how did you turn it into an opportunity? How were you looking at it as opportunity?
Yeah, so I think the meaning that I started really connecting to was leading by example for my kids. Especially, I've got 2 boys. They were 7 and 9 as I was going through this period, and my wife was working pretty much as a single mum to keep the house going because I was such a useless mess at that time. And then also, I would tell my friends it's not a pity party. I don't want people feeling sorry for me. I just want your support and I want your love. But I thought, there was purpose to feeling this way. Like this is going to lead to something. This is going to stretch you in ways that you otherwise wouldn't be stretched. And it sounds almost a bit like a faith or something, and it kind of was in a way because I just felt through this level of trauma, both mentally and physically, if I can get through this, the rewards are going to be huge. So stay focused. And probably what I realized too is that, and this is that reflection piece you talk about as you're sitting there, your mind wanders, and really it was. For me, it was just an example of what everyone goes through at some level in their lives. It might not be as extreme as kidney failure, but people have to face their stuff every day, and it's not always easy. And so I guess I tried to set that example of, hey, I'm sort of working a bit beyond what I thought my limits were. And if someone said that you could do that the way you did, I wouldn't have believed them, because I feared that moment for so many years in my life. But once I got there, that warrior mentality was what kept me moving forward.
Yeah, I think if you look at it as a whole, it becomes so massive to go like, how am I going to overcome this huge mountain of an obstacle? But if you can start to just really lock into just day by day, getting in the trenches, being a warrior and showing up every single day and giving it an honest crack to move through it and try to extract some meaning, trying to see it as an opportunity, the mountain starts to becomes smaller and smaller until you're able to start feeling like, I'm actually making progress here. I'm actually starting to move through this and I'm managing it okay. Is that what started to happen as you were moving through it?
I think so. I think like anything, we develop habits, over time, and it takes time of repetition. And, sometimes, physically, whether it's fitness or something like that, it can be difficult to keep those habits going. But I was forced into this. So it was less about, physical improvement. It was more about mental toughness. Yeah. And I was forced into this fear and into this thing that I had to drive myself to. I had to go to it every single day or 3 times a week. But in between those days, like, try to live a normal life with a different mask on, whether it's work or home. So I think you just form that habit mentally, and to the point where, some days I would, turn up and I was steeled. My mind was just in a different place, and I was just ready, like, come on, let's go, because it became a habit. And even up until the transplant, I didn't feel a great deal of fear by the end. Because
you did all the heavy lifting before that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's exactly it.
And it's like you got yourself to the starting line with the right opportunity. So I'd love to hear about how the transplant came about and who actually gave you that transplant, because that's a really cool story in itself. This is just a quick note on our podcast sponsor. This podcast would not be possible without the support from 4RT. They are a creative house that helps businesses with their advertising, marketing, and content needs. If your business has a story to tell, then these guys can really help you with that story. And through ATA, they've helped us massively, and we trust these guys dearly, and we feel like they're the best in the business. So they could add a lot of value to your marketing and advertising needs.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And the timing of it was amazing. So the week that I was about to start dialysis, I received a text or a message from my first cousin, Sally. And Sal and I, we all grew up close as cousins on that side of the family. There's about 8 of us, and we used to hang out every holidays and so forth. Sally was a few years younger than me, and as we sort of got older, our values are very similar. So it was always just a pleasure catching up with her and seeing her. And we wouldn't catch up for a little while, and then we'd catch up, and it would be a big warm hug, genuine. How are you going? How's life? How are the kids? So we always had a really lovely relationship, and then she sent me this text message, and it basically said, I understand you're unwell and you're up against it at the moment. And Rob, her husband, Rob and I have been thinking of you. So that in itself, gives you a lot of strength out of nowhere. And then, and she said, I'm not sure what the process is, but if it's a matter of getting a kidney, I want you to know I'll give you one. And I'm like, geez.
It's a huge thing to say. So how do you even take that at that point?
So I definitely sat in that because I felt like with my kidney disease, I didn't talk about it with anyone for most of my life. And as weird as it might sound, it was almost a coming out process of, by the way, everyone, I'm chronically ill. I can't do what I wanted to do. I've got some challenges coming up. This is who I am. And so people were quite shocked. So when people would find out, people would say flippantly to me, do you need a kidney? And I counted 11. I had 11 people, and some of them are very dear to me, don't get me wrong, like the people that I love and care about. But
Like it's I'll buy your coffee kind of deal.
It was a bit like that. So the best and warmest of intentions, which you take out of it, and
it is beautiful intent,
and you love them for that. But it would often finish with, "Oh, just let me know." And like you said, it's not like saying, "Look,
how about that kidney?"
Yeah, it's exactly right. So, hey, 2 months later, yeah, I'm really struggling. Can you, pass us that vital organ?
Cough it up, please.
Oh, so that became just between myself and my wife a bit of an ongoing thing, a bit of light entertainment in some ways, because you don't want to offend someone.
Of course.
So the way I would cope with it would be to say, that's so beautiful of you, and you're such a dear person to me, and thank you, thanks so much, and I'd leave it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way to respond.
But when it's your flesh and blood, and when it's a cousin, and knowing Sally like I knew her, and Sally is one of the most determined people you've ever met. So her immediate family will all say, once she's made her mind up on anything, you can't change it, because she's strongly willed, but she's got a heart the size of Far Lap too. So she doesn't just say it for the sake of saying it. She would have thought about this and considered this. So when I received the message, I knew all that. I had that context in my head.
You knew it was very genuine.
100% I did. And so I turned to my wife, on the couch, I think at the time, and just said, read this. Like, this is nuts. And we just looked at each other, and she said, how do you respond? And we sort of talked that over, and I went back and just said, thanks, you're amazing, and I hope the family's well. Again, I was probably trying to pat it off, but don't be crazy. Because again, I was days off starting dialysis. So I was really in the headspace of getting ready for that, and assuming that in 3 years I might get a donor. And she came back to it again and said, no, I'm serious. I'm absolutely serious about this. And she was so persistent, but just so warm and heartfelt. And very quickly that then escalated to, we don't even know if we're the same blood type, let alone whether we match. There's so many things to go through. But she'd done a lot of this research, so she came prepared. Mm-hmm. And within a few days, she was already getting bloods, and she was seeing a doctor. She got a referral to a nephrologist. She was just like
head on.
Yeah. And meanwhile, I'm trying to stay warm at dialysis. I'm certainly not allowing myself to get any hopes up.
Yeah, of course.
But as it unfolded, we turned out to be the same blood type. And over the next 6 or 7 months, it was just test after test after test. And we got to a point where they said, no, we think you're a pretty good match. And then a few more tests. And then it turned out we were basically a sibling match. So
wow.
There's 6 key markers.
That wouldn't happen almost ever.
No, it's really rare. So my mum, who transplanted, I think was like maybe a 3 or a 4 out of 6 from someone who passed away and donated their organs. And but they said the only way you could be a 6 is if you were twins, but this is the next best.
Wow.
So that immediately was like, oh shit, we're on.
That's like meant to be.
Yeah. And the text messages and the notes that we shared all through that period last year are just unreal to look back and reflect on. Like, they're just filled with, go from really practical elements of the process to sharing how we feel, how we communicate it to our family, how just lots of different factors. But mainly this thread is just filled with love. And so it wasn't, again, just the fact that we were a great match. It was like someone who I cared so much about, and we just became so close through the process. And we got to about a week out, and by that time we'd met with our surgeons. We'd done absolutely everything, and that was the moment where it was like, we're on. We are on here. So she came down from Queensland, and I think I finished at work on the Monday, had dialysis on the Tuesday morning, and by Tuesday afternoon I was at the Royal Adelaide Hospital and prepping for that night. And again, I was just lying there so calm. I was just ready. The next morning she came in the morning. I think she came past my room. I was asleep, so she left me this beautiful note that I woke up to, which was, it was all about, we've got this. this is meant to be and all of that. It's really, really special. And she went in first, and I kept on all day. I was just asking, how's she going? And then, I think they didn't tell me the whole truth. Like, I think she had some discomfort around her surgery, but the way they obviously are managing your emotions at the time, they're telling me she's fine. She's fine. It's all good. The kidney's fine, but mainly Sally's fine. I didn't really care too much about the kidney. That wasn't my mindset. It was more Sally. Then they rolled me in, and it was like an episode of ER, man. Like, it was they opened these doors into the theatre and bright lights, and suddenly like 10 to 12 people all just turned to you, and it was just surreal. It was just the most surreal moment, and I'm like, here we go. And I was in a really light mood, like, man, let's just get this on. Yeah. And you had a nurse on one side just stroking my hand and just telling me, you made it, you're going to be fine. And then the surgeon, he's pretty comfortable in his own skin. He's wandering around running the show, and then other people they're all focused on you. And it's this moment right there, right, where you feel like maximum gratitude. Yeah. Like it was the most
overwhelmingly just all through the body.
Total, like, it took over me.
Yeah.
And there was no other emotion that I could describe in that moment, that thing, all of you are here trying to give me a second chance. Yeah. So that was just this really special moment. I can visualize it so clearly. And then next minute I could just hear my name and they were waking me up. And that was that. And then my first stuff was, is Sally okay? And, I'm juiced up. I'm off my face at this time, but is Sally okay? Does my wife know? Do my boys know? Does my boss know? I love you guys, so it was all just like full loved up, that loved up drunk. I was like that for the next 3 or 4 hours, and got a few recordings of that time. But again, it was just out of this world. It was out of this body. And for the next couple of days while I was on the meds that I was controlling myself, it felt pretty good. And then once they took me off the meds, then the recovery started. And that was brutal.
Yeah, okay. In what way brutal?
Oh, just pain, discomfort, couldn't walk. I had some complications. I had a bladder leak that was like a real 13 out of 10 pain. I'd never felt anything like it. Like, literally took me to my knees. Instant sweats, instant tears. And I was sort of, pretty much rolling around screaming on the bed for 2 or 3 hours until the professor came in and jabbed me with some pretty intense stuff. But as sort of gross as this sounds, but catheters in and out, just trying to get well. So in some respects, that really took over that elation. it came back with a thud. Yeah. But we got there, and it was the same mentality. Like, I remember in those moments of pain, like real intense pain, more than anything I had at dialysis, I was just in my head thinking, it's temporary, it's going to pass. Remember this moment. So I'd take these gross selfies of myself in the guts of that pain, really just to remember it, just to remember that moment and to be able to reflect on it later on.
Yeah, that's such a strong way to move through it, to keep reminding yourself that things in that state are temporary and it's not going to last forever, because you can get so stuck in and absolutely melt in those moments if you can't remind yourself that, I'm absolutely suffering right now, but this is not forever. It's just this moment, and if I can get through this moment and one more after that, it will pass at some point.
And the weird headspace in the guts of that suffering is like, oh, wow, this is even more than I expected. Oh, so there's something on the other side of this even better, was my mindset. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. But right now I feel great and I feel healthy. So yes, there is. But I felt like, no, there's a learning here, And that would almost just get me through it. That was my purpose and meaning through those moments of really, really intense pain, was trying to not ignore it, but feel it, own it, but make meaning of it and understand that there's a reason for this. You might not know it, you'll figure it out later on.
Yeah, what were some of those learnings? What were some of those lessons you started to really extract, maybe looking back with a bit of hindsight now?
I do remember, like, at the height of the worst pain, thinking, oh, wow, nothing else really matters except for your family, except for feeling love. like it became this really simple thought of like right now there is like the world's going around, right? Like work's busy down at, they're still flat out. There's other stuff going on. People are driving past the hospital in their day. Yet here I am right now in this, and it made me feel, it just gave me, I don't know how it made me feel other than it just gave me a different perspective, I think. And now, as cliche as it sounds, not to sweat the small stuff, it's not as simple as that. It's just, it's been grateful for the little things, and it's about being, more empathetic to those who might be suffering too in that moment that I had that maybe I'm not aware of. They're the two kind of things that I've been thinking about more and more lately.
Yeah, the gratitude one is huge. I think once you experience something really heavy like that, it does give you an overwhelming sense of appreciation and reverence for life that you might not otherwise experience if you haven't gone through that, which is, I guess, in a weird way, a bit sad sometimes that people have to go through that to experience it. But is that one thing that you observe in others, that maybe they haven't experienced something really challenging that stops them from really realising that the small stuff doesn't matter, and we just need to have a little bit more gratitude for what we actually got going on for us? Yeah,
definitely. I relationships for me during the period where, I was really acutely ill, I was really just fixed on relationships, like who's there for me, who's not, really sensitive to it, overly sensitive to it. And I'd talk to Kate, my wife, and say, what's going on with this person? What's going on with that person? And I'd try to break it down and find meaning in all of that as well. And I sort of, I felt over time that became, the volume on that feeling sort of turned down. I was thinking, they've got stuff going on. They're busy. They got lots on. And also they might not know how to approach this. This might be too intense for them, or...
Yeah, that would be a hard one for people.
Yeah. And I didn't... When you're in it, you don't think it, because you feel your version of normal. Mm-hmm. But then equally, there were people in my life who just really went the other way and just came in really tight and just supported Kate, their boys, like friends taking my boys out for the day. That stuff mattered more than necessarily even just a text to me. But yeah, I started really kind of searching for connection with people, whether it was my nurses, whether it was people in my life, and you'd sort of test the waters with people when you talk to them, and some people would then just ask question after question, and you're like, okay, we're on, great, this is awesome. And some people, obviously, didn't know how to relate to it or talk to it. And so, yeah, I found that period with people really, really quite interesting.
Has that helped you really navigate and understand who's really there for you, and I guess filter out or know straight away when you feel a connection is right with someone and it's right for them to be in your life?
I think so, 100%.
100%. It's like a superpower for you to actually sense that now.
Yeah, I think I'm sensitive by nature, and I feel like that's heightened because I feel there are definitely people in my life who have really connected to through this. There's people that I've met through it, other people globally who are suffering with kidney disease that we've connected, online. And there's a guy locally here in Adelaide, Scotty, who transplanted a couple of days after me, and just a great guy. And we sort of share notes all the time. We're sharing numbers on our bloods, but just a great, regardless of the kidney stuff, just a great guy, great person. And I think there's definitely like this feeling of those in that inner circle, how special they are, and there's kind of layers. We've got layers in our lives that go out to the kind of that outer crust. And again, I don't feel any resentment, don't get me wrong, but it was definitely a forced filtering process of sorts.
Yeah. So how long did it take you to start to recover, and how's the process been since the transplant? Like, are you able to function and do everything that you used to do when you were younger now?
Yeah.
Where are you at with just your body? Yeah,
feeling great. Yeah, I feel really amazing. Still feel tired when I work too much, or I'm burning the candle out, and I get warned by my medical crew to say slow down and go easy on yourself, which I'm starting to take that advice and taking time out guilt-free to just recover, or guilt-free to go and watch my kids play sport and be present for them. And so that's helped. But yeah, physically, I'm just ready. I'm sort of in attack mode. Like, I'm ready for, like, what's the next challenge? Give me something. I don't think I'm sort of personality that would come out of that and then just sit still and just sit in peace. I need to keep charging. So yeah, physically I haven't really had any complications for a few months. Everything's steady, feel clear. And probably it's the really little things that I love hearing, like, whether it's just my wife commenting on my contribution around the house that is now back, or whether it's at work and I'm leading something, or it's my kids who, I'm going to be leveraging this story forever for those boys to try to teach them to face their stuff head on. And we have those chats as they're getting older, more and more. How do they respond?
Did they understand what was going on through this time, and how have you communicated with them on this?
Yeah, that's a great question. We made a decision really early on, Kate and I, that we were just going to go at it really honestly and openly with the boys. So we sat down initially when things were starting to increase, like in terms of symptoms, and told the boys that, hey, this is what Dad's got, spoke about it, then drew it. And tried to explain the science at some level, but then also explain it in a practical way in terms of how it affects their life. So when we go out and kick the footy, or when we play cricket, like, I just don't have the energy. Or when I'm home and you see Dad go straight to bed after work, like at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, it's because of this. Because it's not because I'm lazy. It's not because I don't want to hang out. It's just because I can't. Like, I physically can't.
That's so important to show them that, because then if you didn't, and you kind of tiptoe around it, then they might think, oh, Dad doesn't love me, and then to build all these stories around you not being present with them, and maybe it builds into resentment later on if they don't understand what's going on. It would have been really helpful for them to actually go, like, I understand, and also build a stronger connection with them through that process.
Yeah, like my youngest boy, he after dialysis, he's full of spirit. And he'd come up to me and he'd just be like, he'd see the bandage on my arm and just would very naturally, how was D? Like trying to be cool. Yeah, how was D, Dad? And I was like, D was sweet, man. Or D was really tough today. Why was it tough? And so, they wouldn't necessarily go to school and talk to their mates about it, but we would tell them, like, Dad might be getting a new kidney, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, to the point where the trickiest conversations are when they work out what hereditary meant was they both will say from time to time, I'm worried that I'm going to have it. So navigating that is definitely a challenge, but again, in the spirit of being open and honest with the boys, I say, well, you may have it, but what you've got now is you've got an example of a few people in your life, including your dad, who's got through it. And look at me now. Am I okay? Yeah, you're sweet. I hopefully paved a path for those boys. And if they do have it, they'll have to work through their own stuff, no doubt. And I'll just be there to support them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. And yeah, you've built the platform for them to actually navigate something like this if it does happen that way for them. I'm someone that I think I attach meaning and inquiry to a lot of things, and I really feel that circumstances, events, situations arise for particular reasons, and then it's our responsibility to understand what those reasons are. Obviously, having PKD is a genetic disorder, but do you look into the idea that this has happened for a reason or for you? And if so, do you have any understanding as to why that is, or why you think this is come into your life?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it's one of many things that have happened for a reason. My parents broke up at when I was about 12, at a very formative age. Father's battled addiction his whole life. He doesn't have much longer with us. From my job and my career, in, from having dad sort of pretty well absent to then working my entire career at a football club, which is a hyper masculine environment. That's not coincidence to me. I think the anxiety and the fear that I had through my 20s that, was partly because of my disease, was partly maybe my upbringing, partly the way I'm wired, working my way through that, trying to learn off other people, other people who around me were my best mate, was very ill and faced a terminal disease that he got through, and being inspired by that and being inspired by his toughness and his grit. So I've always been one of these people that just searches for it, like searches for it in a conversation, searches for it in a sentence, like just tries to cling onto those little bits, and it's a cumulative effect of all these little learnings and connecting to these little moments or connecting to people that I think has really helped me. And so I think a lot of that led to this moment of facing a chronic illness with hopefully, with courage was something that I wanted to do. And I think the meaning for me now is a little bit around trying to lead and support others. I really think about that as a dad. I think about that as a friend, as a husband. I think about trying to find other young people out there through Kidney Health Australia or somewhere who are suffering, and trying to be someone they can talk to with lived experience, because a lot of people with kidney disease are old.
Yes.
So there's not a lot of young people in the system that you come across. It certainly has shifted that, but it's also, I think, reinforced, or it's maybe drawn a deeper connection almost to myself, like having trust in myself, trust in my own feelings, trust in my own strength, not putting limits on myself, because I probably did, and I think, I've got a limit, I'm not going to be able to deal with that. Where now I'm like, I smashed through that limit. So I can apply that thinking to something else in my life. And I also, again, whether it's like a faith or whether it's a just trusting life that through great pain can lead to great reward, and that those times then, when you're consciously thinking about that, the low points then don't get quite as low.
Yeah. How are you then applying that to other things, or how do you tangibly feel that things are different post illness?
I think I'm tougher.
Yeah.
I think I've got clearer boundaries in my life. Got a real sense of what's right and what's wrong. I've got a really strong feeling about that, and that probably applies to people, it applies to work, it applies to lots of different things, and even just I certainly have a different perspective on little things that used to bug me. And that's I know that just sounds like it's such an easy thing to say, but it has been a shift. But I think the boundaries are probably the number one.
Yeah. Can you explain that a little bit more? Because I think a lot of people struggle with boundaries. Well, what have you started to I guess, really realise and enforce boundaries in your life?
It works two ways. I think with certain people and certain moments in your life, you actually have to release and effectively open those boundaries out, let people in, let moments in, and learn from them, feel them, celebrate them, reflect on them, whatever it might be. On the other side of that, don't suffer fools. Don't be taken for granted. Don't be walked over, and spend your time wisely. Those sorts of things, I think, for me are really, really important now. And it's not so much of an emotional response to that. It's actually quite it's quite a logical thing in my mind. Like, no, that's just not how I'm going to be treated, or that doesn't feel good how that conversation ended with someone, so I need to talk to them. Or there's just an awareness around that for me.
So many people are scared to have that sort of conversation, though. Is it just the courage of, and I guess the pain that you've been through that helps you feel like that's not an issue to just have the conversation with someone if you feel like it's ended on bad terms or something to address?
Yeah, I think so, because I think with the right intentions, it can only lead to good. As uncomfortable as it might feel, it will lead to something. Or if it doesn't lead to that, at least you know. And those boundaries are also with yourself in terms of where you're spending your time and what you're spending your time thinking about. Like, does that actually really matter? And, most of my life have been quite emotional responses, and I still default to that. And I think it's a strength. I don't think it's a bad thing. But it's just like this different filter that your mind goes through to get to an outcome, and whether that outcome is a better conversation, a better relationship, a better day, a better meeting, whatever, then I think that filter helps.
But I guess on the same token, it would have helped you realise maybe who's not meant to be in your life straight away when you put up that boundary. And I think straight away whether you actually want them around or not, and that would have been really, really clear at that time.
Yeah, and you might still want them around because you care about them and you still feel for them and love them, but it's not at the level you maybe thought it was. And again, vice versa. People who you liked, but then just when you were down on the canvas, were there just to support, and then just became even more important to you.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you started telling people around your close circle, and you obviously told people at work. How did you go about navigating the work environment and then telling people about your illness, and how did people respond?
Yeah, it was definitely something I thought about for a long time, and I'd mentioned it a couple of times at work in passing, and not that it didn't get traction because I wasn't after it. I just don't think people understood what it meant. So it got to the point where, I was really starting to struggle physically. I was quite bloated because these kidneys are huge. So I looked like I had a big beer belly, and women with polycystic kidneys of all ages get asked if they're pregnant. Like, it's that sort of shape. So I'd really bloated out. I was conscious of what I looked like, and part of me almost wanted to explain that a bit as well, as vain as that sounds. But
so fair.
It's like,
I'm not fat.
I'm not,
this disease.
Yeah, I'm not drinking beers every single night. In fact, I haven't drunk in 6 months, but I've got these 2 massive 3-kilo kidneys in me. But there was some close confidants at work very, very early who would just encourage me, and they just very quietly come up to me and say, "You okay?" And that was enough. And it was just a knowing look. It was just they had my back, or they'd say, "Just go. You got to go home." And I also had one of my closest colleagues and friend. We worked very closely together, and she saw me have a couple of breakdowns where it's just too much, and I was just overwhelmed. I was freaking out and broke down at work, and she would support me and help me, and I'd have to explain that. But one of the bigger conversations I had was with our CEO at Port, Matt Richardson, who's a great mate as well, and just told him that this is the outlook. It's always been there, but now we're getting to the pointy end, and I was just shit scared. What does it mean for work? I'm thinking mortgage. I'm thinking,
of course,
like all practical stuff. And he just took all the fear away in like one sort of sentence, and he said, no, don't worry about any of that. It's about you. It's about your family. It's about your health, and we're going to support you the whole way. And that was it. Simple as that. There was no other big conversation or discussion pretty much at all after that point. But he had my back, and me knowing that he had my back was so special, and just took the weight of the world off my shoulders. So that was definitely a big moment, and I think slowly it started to trickle out a bit. And then once I started dialysis, I didn't have a moment of sorts in front of all of my colleagues and say, "Hey guys, let me tell you about kidney disease." But people would see me come in late, and I'd have bandages on my arms, or my colour was off. I was losing weight. I certainly didn't look the best version of myself, and it sort of picked up. And people were just then kind, asking how I was going, how'd it go.
So we just had a cutout of the video, which we were working through some technical difficulties, but I just want to tie back into your work situation and the cultural values of the Port Adelaide Football Club. So from the outside, it seems evident that there is a strong cultural value placed on the club, and is that something that is instilled behind the scenes, and how does that play out for you guys at work?
Yeah, I was a really interesting test case of that, and for me personally, the experience was really good in terms of, it's easy to write up on a board a word which might represent your value, but when it really matters about living the value, you learn a lot about the place. For me personally, I certainly felt that from our CEO, from Richo, and then that filtered down through the business. So I was effectively working part-time, trying to manage dialysis. So I'm a leader at the club, so and I pride myself on my energy and lifting other people up and that sort of thing. So that took a lot out of me to maintain that, which I think since I transplanted, a lot of people actually came up to me and said, I actually didn't realise, wow, okay. And there was this kind of, this chat like, wow, we had you at, 10% kidney function. What's it going to look like now that you've got this new one? Look out. But really it wasn't the headline of that. It was actually more the appointments. It was more the fact that I spent so much time out with dialysis. It was the emotional toll that, how are you going? Well, actually, I'm not going that great. I'm struggling. But I lent on the club and the community of the club and the people at the club, working in sport, any sport at any scale, whether it's a small community club or if it's a professional club at a national scale. You rely on each other. You work hard, you do all of that. You give something, but then you have to give more. And then when you've given all you think you have to a job like that, then you have to give a little bit more too. And look, we're not saving lives, don't get me wrong, but we just care a lot about making the club the best it can be. We talk a lot about when you eventually leave, leaving it in a better place than you got it, and that right now we're just temporary custodians of the place. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, the focus of that becomes the community and the people and the passion and the sacrifice that our fans have towards their football club. So that's a double-edged sword. That's like when you're up, particularly at Port Adelaide, there is nothing like it. It is just, we're all, we have a bit of a strut about us where,
definitely a swagger.
There's definitely a swagger. Now, the other side of that is the expectations are really high at Port, and so they should be. And we talk about embracing that expectation, but it means when you're not living up to those expectations that we talk about, that our fans live and breathe and have for many, many generations, people feel really hurt. It's personal. It's just not a game of footy, and it's just not a club.
It's so huge for some people. They live and breathe, and it's their life.
They do, and in their value system, we meet a lot of people who might not have a family structure to lean on, or they might have other things, disadvantages in their life, and Port Adelaide is what they rely on. Yeah. That's their constant.
It's a religion.
It is. It's absolutely that. And when you walk into the place, it's all consuming. So even coming back post-transplant for me, I had 3 months off. Certainly had a different perspective on life. It's feeling clear, and lots of people saying to me, just ease back into it. But it's just not that sort of environment. I came back in February in the preseason, and you're just straight into it. And personally, I love that. Like I really just thrive off that energy. We do try to stay calm the best we can. We do try to find, make the lows not too dramatic, and the highs also just, keep your emotions in check. But ultimately, we feel like we're serving a community, and my particular role, which is looking after all of our consumer functions of retail, ticketing, and membership, we're on the front line with our people. So we pride ourselves on understanding that sentiment, and sometimes it's amazing, and other times it's not great. And for me personally, though, again, I get it. I grew up as a Port Adelaide kid, and I understand what it means to those people. And sometimes I like to say that if I'm meeting with members, because I want them to know that that someone in the club, we care. Not just me. We all care about what you're saying.
Yeah, that's really refreshing to hear when you hear someone in that sort of role go like, yeah, I hear you. Like, well, I'm hurting too, and I want Port to be doing so well,
100%.
and I'm pushing. Just know that we're doing the best we can here.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not like we're just sitting here and twiddling our thumbs.
No, and the care that people don't see, we don't talk about it. Like we don't. There's obviously cases and instances where it might be public, and we might be supporting a player going through a really difficult period of their life, or whatever. But inside the walls, my lived experience from all aspects of the footy club was that people rallied around me, and people were just so invested in me getting better. And that to me is what the spirit of that place is. And I'm not sure it would have been the case in different organisations.
Mm-hmm. I guess so many people wouldn't even know what goes on behind the scenes. Like with the business side and the marketing side of a football club, what actually does it involve, and what is your role, or what does your day look like?
Yeah, so there's sort of a couple of sides to it. There's certainly a commercial side, that there is a commercial reality of working in a professional sporting organisation, because it's not cheap to run a football club. It's not cheap to put a team out and so forth. So yeah, we are certainly trying to capitalise where we can, but we try to do that by adding value to our fans. And at the core of everything we do it through this filter of what's best for our fans. And sometimes that's difficult to navigate because the AFL's overly regulated. So we are sometimes forced into situations that we can't control. But look, for me personally, it's exciting. You walk in and you're just so privileged to walk through the doors and to know that your day is about making that footy club better or making fans' experience better. We definitely trying to get as many bums on seats at Adelaide Oval for our home games. We're trying to feed our supporters fantastic content. We're trying to make our footballers and our athletes as accessible as possible. Even from a retail perspective, trying to, design and produce products that people want. And that can be, that can be really fun. Like, we've just come off a fantastic prison bar campaign. Yeah. We didn't win the showdown, which really hurt our club and really hurt our community. But we certainly approached the lead up of that, of giving our people what they want and making, the prison bar that sort of, what everything that represents, more than just a piece of fabric, but what it represents over generations on the field and off the field within families, make them feel proud about that.
Yeah, that from the outside, that is really evident that Port Adelaide do that very well. Just their drive to really connect with their fans and the history of the club as well, because there is such a rich history, and how the Port Adelaide Magpies and how that kind of links into the Port Adelaide Football Club that's come through the AFL, and just that keeping that tie alive, and the history is just, I think from a marketing point of view, it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's a balance though. So yeah, we have been accused at times as living in that history, and we just want to be seen as honouring and respecting and celebrating that history, absolutely. But understanding we need to continue to progress. And right now it's been close to 20 years since our last flag, and given our expectations, that's not good enough. Yeah. So we're working hard to make that happen and make our people proud.
Mm-hmm. How do you plan to get a flag? Like, is it like a 5-year plan, and how do you go about really, as a football club, driving that process to get one?
Yeah, well, we have a central strategy at the club called Chasing Greatness, and it's really aspirational. So we definitely put high expectations on ourselves, because that's what our people expect. So we have different pillars within that strategy that cover everything from obviously football, from achieving 100,000 members, to making our community proud through our community work, and bringing in partners that make us better, and being financially strong, all of these things. So the key for us is to be aligned on that, but also to have a really big, bold vision. We deliberately stretch ourselves to think beyond what we think is possible, and that's led by our CEO and all of us in leadership to to kind of to push our people and to drive our people. And we don't always, and we haven't achieved everything in that plan, which is a couple of years old now, but we're so hungry. We're so hungry for it. One of the things in our area that we often talk about is in sort of the member area and the supporter area is that we certainly we want to be there to guide our people, to support them, and to make their experience through the Port Adelaide Football Club the best it can possibly be. That's our role, is to facilitate it. And that's sometimes difficult if the team's not performing, because you might do everything right and feel like you're ready to, strike in that moment, and you sell out a showdown and you do those things, and then if the team doesn't deliver, it hurts. But we have a bit of a 24-hour rule around, you can celebrate or sook for 24 hours, and then by the time you come back in on Monday morning, it's all energy into the next game or the next big moment for us off field, to make sure that we do our people proud. Yeah,
that's really, really healthy. I mean, you guys have been really innovative, and one innovation that I'm not sure if any other clubs do this, by the way, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the Never Tear Us Apart initiative with the game day song that leads up to the first bounce. Are you guys the only club that does that in the AFL? Is there anyone else?
Oh, there's different rituals. Okay. I think this particular one we've now owned for a period of time. It's something that we're incredibly proud of. But understanding when it happened, again, we just facilitated the moment. So we had this great opportunity going from Football Park, Amy Stadium, down to Adelaide Oval. Mm-hmm. And for us, that was just a game changer for our people. Better public transport infrastructure, better venue, better seats, better view, you name it. The whole thing was a fresh start, but it was also at this oval where we had a very rich history too. So whilst we had that at Amy Stadium at Football Park, we won lots of flags there. There was something a little bit more neutral about Adelaide Oval, knowing that we were co-tenants with the Crows. So for us, particularly in that first game, we had 2 or 3 years of planning going into some of those moments. From team entry, we had a rudimental song ready to roll for that. We trialled it the year before, which not a lot of people realise. We trialled it at the finals as a team entry moment before the club song, and it seemed to resonate. And then in the first game also, we had this idea of having a 60-second countdown, which wasn't necessarily new at the time. It had been trialled here and there, but it wasn't a regular fixture. And we decided on that a long way out that we were going to just hype that moment. And we had the moment in place, and then one of our team members, she found the song. It was around the time where that In Excess doco was on, because we couldn't just nail the song. And then Tara McLeod, her name is, she came in one day and said, "It's Never Tear Us Apart." And we all just went, yes, it 100%.
As soon as she said it, you knew.
Oh, everyone knew. So we trialled the first verse, and then we kind of tweaked it, and we ended up on the second verse, and then we just put it there, and so it was such a big moment, but it was this collaborative moment that we'd been building up for so long, and that was the icing on the cake. And so then from there we played it, and at the first game it was a showdown. And we had all the dignitaries there. So we had the SANFL, cricket was there was government, the two clubs. It was like this coming together of all these old relationships in SA sport. And Never Tear Us Apart played with the countdown, and it was interpreted as, hey, we're all now coming together as a collective, and we're going to let resting dogs lie, and let's go forward together as one South Australia. And it 100% wasn't that. It couldn't have been further from that. It was mainly reflective of the fact that we were a club that, we were forced apart when we got an AFL licence, an SANFL club, an AFL club, and we were operating separately. We came back together as one club, and we were during those years, there was lots of talk about, is Port Adelaide strong enough? Is it big enough to be able to survive in the AFL and so forth? And we absolutely are. And so there was more about our fans. But then what we started seeing was fans by week 1, week 2, week 2, week 3, holding up their scarves. And we started noticing it, and it started sort of in the cheer squad area. We've got another supporter group, the Alberton crowd, and they were sort of leading it as well. But we pride ourselves on never telling our supporters how to support. So there are some clubs out there that have done that before, having little workshops for their supporters around the different chants they want to use at games. And it just doesn't work.
Cringy.
It's gross. So we definitely don't that. But again, facilitating the moment was, instead of then saying, hey guys, you might have seen this, now hold your scarves up, do this when that comes. All we did is we just started saying, like on a Friday night before a Saturday game, 24 hours to go, and we would just show a fan holding up their scarf.
Yeah, that's awesome messaging.
So we would just leak it in there, and just more and more repetitive imagery, and then it just started building and building. And the other thing that happened was people started requesting, can you publish that on YouTube? So can you publish that 60-second moment? And we just refused. We just wouldn't entertain it because we wanted our people to own it, and it's theirs. It's not ours. We just put a song up there and a countdown, but it's our fans, it's our supporters, it's the kind of the true believers that made it happen. But the other thing that happened that day, which was pretty special with the team entry, was, I don't know if you remember, the sun was out. It was just Adelaide perfection. We were chomping at the bit, and it was our home game, which was such a we're very fortunate to receive that. But by the time Rudimental started and Not Giving In started, which was a bit of an internal mantra that Ken had brought in at the time, and that became external, everyone just got on their feet and started clapping, and then again it just happened. So it happens to this day, both of those rituals, and we've just recently extended that team entry ritual to connect back to Port Adelaide and the wharves and the boats and the ocean and those sorts of things. So we've just added another little bit at the front of it. And look, we think generally, and I try to say this as humbly as I can, and it's not going to sound humble, but the AFL continue to refer to our match day experience as the best in the league. Which we're super proud of, and we don't take for granted, because again, it's our fans that make it that. It would just be made a bit better if we win.
Absolutely, that would be the next piece of the puzzle. Yeah. But yeah, that comes through really clearly at Port Adelaide. I mean, you guys are doing an amazing job of, I guess, entrenching yourself and having a culture and a history that's going to last and stand the test of time. And it reminds me of Liverpool with the "You Will Never Walk Alone" ritual that they have when the fans are singing and they've got just the full stadium, and I just get goosebumps. Yeah, and it's amazing to watch.
It's so inspiring. Yeah, and look, those influences clearly come through, and as do everything that we do in sports, because a lot of what we've done, all of us have done previously, isn't necessarily original, but it's about it resonating with your community and working for your people. And I feel the same, both with that Liverpool moment, but I still feel the same with our moment. And I've seen it, as much as anyone, and it still gets the hairs on the back of the neck going, and you feel, you feel invincible at that very moment. And like we had a moment last week where, we couldn't get the job done in the showdown, but we had vision of a couple of our players coming onto the bench, and just as they were coming off, they sort of looked at each other and nudged each other and just looked around. And to know that our supporters have that impact on our players, that's the connection we're after.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
They're nudging themselves and going, wow, how good is this?
This is nuts.
Unreal.
Yeah. So, look, we're proud of it, but again, we exist to win flags and premiership. So all of it's a little diminished if you can't back it up on field. But hopefully that's not too far off.
Yeah. Let's see. But you're doing your end of the bargain on your side of Port Adelaide, and hopefully the players and the coaching staff, they can get their side together, and then some special things can happen.
Yeah, the people we've got at the club are fantastic. There's just so much creativity, so much talent. There's so much care. We talk a lot about care and connection in the club as part of our core value system, and that's for each other. So making each other better within the environment and setting others up for wins. And if we're doing that, and if we do that in a selfless way, we're going to be better. But also connecting with and making our community really proud of us. So if they're not, we stew on that and just immediately, like we challenge ourselves daily, like how do we change that? How do we make it better? And our people give us plenty of feedback, which is, as they say, is a gift. But we don't take it lightly. Yeah, we know it's their club, so it's up to us to make it better.
What needs to shift in the mindset of, I guess, the collective more from a playing perspective or coaching perspective that is going to help drive you guys to get that premiership that you guys are searching for?
Yeah, it's a bit of a tough one for me to answer because I'm not in and under all of that.
Yep.
I can answer it as a supporter.
Yes, supporter.
Yeah,
Go for it.
yeah. So I think everyone believes in the people that, the list and the talent that we have, and it's about executing when it matters. I think that's it. I think in the big moments, it's about, turning the game our way. It's about capitalising on those opportunities. But, these group of people, both in our men's and women's program, again, really care about each other, and they really understand the responsibility of what representing this football club means. They care. So when they lose, it hurts, really deeply hurts. And they also can't hide themselves from all the scrutiny. That just comes with being a pro athlete. Yeah. But they're always trying to better themselves.
Through your experiences, is there a way that you feel people need to stand up in like a sporting arena? I guess I want to tie into some of the experiences you've had, because I think about it from a tennis perspective, and there's definite moments in the match that you need to stand up and be brave. Is there any advice or anything that you kind of draw upon to help, I guess, athletes to really stand up, or how they do that in those moments?
Yeah. I guess from my experience, because I'm the furthest thing from an athlete, but in terms of my mindset, to me, I think it's about embracing that moment as an opportunity. So I think maybe from what you might have heard, the way that I would consider going up against my illness. And that's how, that was the mindset. It wasn't going with it. For me, it was going up against it. Even if I couldn't control it, it just helped me cope. But also, like, those moments, those big pressure moments where you feel fear and you feel scared is, you can train yourself out of that. Like, for me, I could. Now, I don't know if an athlete can do that, but I feel like those big moments that inevitably present themselves, and you can't predict when those moments are going to come, but you've got to be ready. and I say that again through the filter of my illness, not the filter of an athlete. But I think, endeavour and courage and effort is also, I think, really translatable between those two things. Is for me, I just wanted my family and my friends and people in my circle to see that I was having a crack at this, that I wasn't just, curled up in a ball in the corner. And people would say to me all the time, it's okay, it's okay to have bad days. And that just wasn't my mentality. It's like, no, I don't want to get caught in that. And I just wonder whether, in high performance environments anywhere, that it's about having that mindset of attack and not defense. About, knowing that these moments are going to come along. It might come along in a board meeting. It might come along in a, on the field. But if you're prepared and you believe in your preparation, surely that helps you execute in the moment.
Yeah, that's big. That's really big. I think a lot of people, from my observations in a younger generation, are struggling to, I guess, believe or stand up in these moments or have the tools to be brave. Is that something you notice with the younger generation yourself? And what sort of advice would you give to them to help them navigate some of the challenges that they're facing, especially through just like excess use of social media and society telling them they need to be a certain way, maybe not being able to find their own identity? Is there any kind of pieces of advice that you would help kids with to actually start to stand up and believe and find out who they are?
I think about this a lot with my kids, and I think generally speaking, there's an impatience.
Yes.
That they want it now. They want it now. It's immediate, whether it's career, whether it's my boys expecting something at home, and it's not asking, it's not wanting, it's just an expectation that they're going to get it. And that's a really difficult thing to navigate. You mentioned self and identity. I think more time needs to be spent, and whether this isn't, in the education system, this is as parents, this is as someone who is leading younger people, coaches, managers, whatever, is actually spending time to interrogate, investigate, be present, trying to get inside the minds of the younger people to find out also what their motivation is. Like, what are you trying to achieve? Like, what is the goal? Well, okay, that's great, and that's a really positive thing. And some people might not even have that, but then just working out the steps towards that, actually trying to break it down. Where I think, the younger generalization, but a lot of young people are thinking macro and the result and not the process. If I get asked about my career journey, I try to explain to younger people and talk very deliberately about my failures and talk about moments where I received like gut-wrenching feedback because they were my big learning moments. And I know that I still know every leader that's ever delivered it. And I say that to my boys as well, is, whether it's facing a challenging moment in their own sport or at school, or if, in lots of different areas of just being a parent, is just trying to explain to the boys, like, that you have to be patient. It's not always going to go your own way. Sometimes you're going to feel great, but that's fleeting. And sometimes you're going to feel crap, and that can also be fleeting. But generally in life, it's all of that is just temporary. It's going to come and go. And trying to find a solid base in between, I think, is really important. I find at work a lot of younger people are wanting to have a bigger title, earn more money really quickly. The ones that I think are going to be successful are the ones that are going to be more prepared to listen and learn and seek feedback with a view and an intention to better themselves, are going to be the ones that are going to be resilient enough in the next couple of decades to then lead the next group. I think if you try to rush that process, you're going to miss so much along the way. That's for all the parents out there, that's a daily challenge, right, with your kids, but it's something I try to instill into my boys.
Yeah, that's amazing. I definitely observe similar things with the types of people who want to rush through that process, get a bigger title, and maybe not honest with where they're actually at in the process that they have to go through to get to where they wanted to. Sorry to interrupt, like the most learning in all of that, which they don't realise or maybe don't want to accept or face, is it will be in the grind. Yeah. It'll be in the small stuff. That's where the gold is going to be. It's not going to be in the big highlight moments. They're great, and you work up to them and celebrate them. Celebrate your wins, great, but it's going to be in the grind where you'll develop. That's not always an easy thing to walk towards. Yeah, spot on. How do you instill patience with your boys? I mean, that's such a challenging one that I feel, because like you said, there's that instant gratification culture, everything at their fingertips. You can get answered to almost any question on Google within seconds. So what sort of things do you do to help your boys, I guess, stay patient and humble with the process? Yeah,
humility is a big one we talk about. And that goes, again, two ways. Like, that if you are doing something really well, just sit within it, feel good about yourself, and then it gives you something to build from. Or if it doesn't go your way, don't fall into a victim mode. Just know that, okay, now here is an opportunity. In terms of patience, it's a really difficult one. I find that difficult. I find the two things that help it is spending quality time, is actually just spending time device free and doing something together. Because particularly as a father of two young boys, at the age they just want you. They don't want anything else. They just want your time. And once you've got their time and their attention, and usually it's something physical, but it could be drawing, it could be other things. That's when I feel like I can get through to them. That's when I feel like we can have some deeper chats, often in the car, and they might be tidbits because you don't want to take up too much, but that's when we tend to have our best moments together, and when we truly connect is when they're away from all of that. They know that they've got you. You're not thinking about work. You're not thinking about anything else. You're just tuned into them at that moment. That to me is probably the closest thing, other than saying, no, you can't have something, and trying to explain why. And then I often try to, get them to, or promote to them and prompt them to reflect. Is that who you want to be? Is that like that behaviour? Is that like the sort of behaviour you want to be around if you're others? And what does that look like? And again, sometimes those conversations are good at bedtime, when we're all kind of just tuned in. And I don't know about you, but I remember those chats with my parents at the end of a day. And that's when we tend to, I feel like I'm bringing out my dad gold on them, is when we can talk about, stuff they've done really well, couple of things they can learn about, and tend to get a bit of a response then.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, through your journey, you've grown so much. What sort of growth are you seeing in your kids now that you're bringing more dad gold through life experience that you faced?
Oh, look, we do reflect on the last few years, and there might be moments, even after this, I was going to have a hit of tennis with my oldest lad, and they were just things we couldn't do. So I'll gently remind them every now and then, like, remember how tough that was, guys, but we got through it.
Yeah.
So it's not. I really try not to use the me or the I. It's like, we did this as a group and as a team, and look at us now. Like, we're so much stronger for it. So it's definitely in that. And then it's just about creating experiences, I think, with those boys is, I think about that so much around, like, how can we create a new experience? My wife takes them to WOMAD every year, and that's such an important ritual for them now. And they're like, the fact that they're in that environment, that live music and creative environment's really good. Then on the flip side, they definitely get great access to their love of football in Port Adelaide through me. But I try to value those and talk up those experiences more than things. But oh man, it's an ongoing learning for a parent. Like, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves as parents, thinking how you're either going to set them up for life to lead a fulfilling, healthy, loving life, and not messing them up. and I think there's a lot of self-doubt as parents that you reflect on around, like, I could have handled that better, I could have done that better. But it's funny, once you start talking about it to other parents, I find, like, a lot of the dads, we talk about this, and as soon as it comes up, everyone just starts nodding when you feel like, this might be just a problem isolated to us, or, am I doing it wrong, or is, I can't get through to my kid. But I think we all face that doubt.
I can imagine it would be so hard to be a parent, and probably one of the most challenging things to guide and feel like you're doing the right thing or not doing the right thing, and how to navigate the balance of discipline and love and when to pull back, and all of those things I think would be incredibly challenging. But I think you've got such a good platform through your experience to raise your boys to be such strong, resilient, fine young men in the future through your experience, which I think is absolutely gold. And I think anyone listening to this conversation, I think there's so much to tap into in terms of the power of the mind and how to move through challenging obstacles, but not by fearing them, but to actually face them and look at them in the eye and accept them for what they are. And I think that gives you the power and the strength to at least give it a crack and not die wondering. So appreciate this has been inspiring and really just a great listening experience for myself and something that I'm going to look back on and listen to extract some gold. And I think anyone else that listens, I think there's a lot to take away. So appreciate your time, Stephen. Thanks a lot for being here.
Thanks for having me. Very kind. Cheers, Luke.